Hello, my dears, and welcome to the third session of my ongoing tarot prediction about the chances of the candidates of this year's presidential election, the 2020 presidential election. As you know, I've already done card spreads about Donald Trump and Joe Biden, and today I would like to do a card spread about the one candidate that is probably the most individualized of all the candidates that are running so far, namely Bernie Sanders. And before I do this, I would like to say thanks a lot for the more than 1,500 of you who have looked at the two card spreads that I've already done. And a big thank you to those of you who have already subscribed. Keep it going, it's very much appreciated. And I would very much like to see you comment on the card spreads that I've already done, and I would like to hear what you think about the chances of the candidates that we've already talked about. And as I said the last couple of times, please remember that I have my personal opinions about all the candidates that are running in this year's presidential election. Yet my personal opinions never enter into this. I entirely and strictly go by what I see in the cards. So if you comment, please remember that I'm the messenger. Don't shoot the messenger. So if you comment, which is, as I said, which is very much appreciated, please do so nicely. And just like the last couple of times, I will be doing the classical Celtic Cross spread. And I will complement this by a spread of my Dakini Oracle cards that I've done earlier in the day. And we will see whether the Dakini Oracle cards will complement or contradict or bring new information to what we will see in the Celtic Cross spread. So I've already shuffled the cards, so we can go straight down into business. And I'll be putting down the cards to see how the chances are for Bernie Sanders to win the 2020 presidential elections in the USA. Well, my dears, here we have the tarot card spread for Bernie Sanders and his chances to win the 2020 presidential elections. And as I said, I've used the Celtic card spread. What I've done is I've arranged the four cards on the right in a bit of a different arrangement than is usually done, quite simply so as to make sure that they can be seen on camera. And as you notice, there is an 11th card which sort of dropped out of the pack when I was choosing the cards, and I believe that these cards who present themselves sort of out of their own free will are always significant and need to be included into the card spread. So this is why I've done that, and we now have 11 cards instead of 10. So let's look at the situation, and the situation is very interesting, actually. Now, where does Bernie Sanders come from, first of all? Now, he comes, the card that we get here is the Sun in reverse, which means that despite the fact that Bernie Sanders is a gifted individual who has a lot to give to society, he hasn't always had it easy, and he has had to fight against the odds. One might even say he has had to fight every inch of the way in order to get where he is right now. But this has not embittered him, as we said. Quite the opposite. If we look at his psychological foundations, we see the King of Pentacles, which means that what we see in Bernie Sanders is a quality leader, someone who is quite able to make difficult decisions and to handle power, which is an aspect that I think Bernie Sanders tries not to show to the world too much, but it is actually there. So his capabilities, as far as this is concerned, is much greater than people might want to believe. Also, what comes quite handy to him during his present campaign is the two ladies that we see here. We see the Queen of Wands, and we see the Queen of Cups working together, which means that within the personality of Bernie Sanders, we have a combination of creative impulses and the ability to turn these creative impulses into reality, which means that not only does he have good ideas, he's also able to turn these good ideas into a reality that benefits everyone. And the interesting thing that is that both of these energies are female. So what we have here is someone who doesn't lead in the typically masculine way by power and by coercion, but someone who leads in a soft sort of way by conviction and by winning people over. And he's a creative visionary in a sort of way who has an idea about how to build a nation that is better than the one that exists now, and he has the capabilities to actually do that. Now, let me remind you that, as I already said, what I say, everything I say about the candidates is not my personal opinions. It is strictly what I see in the cards. It's what the cards tell me. So what is going to happen in the near future? Unsurprisingly, we get a card like the Three of Pentacles, which means that Bernie Sanders will find it surprisingly easy to gradually win over more and more people to his personal vision of, let's be a bit dramatic and call it a new America that he would like to build, quite simply because his vision of the new America corresponds to the vision that many of his voters, or that many voters in general, have. So, as a matter of fact, everything looks rosy, but not quite as rosy as we might want to believe at first look, because there are a couple of problems. First of all, we have the Eight of Wands in reverse, which means that on a conscious level, things aren't going the way that Bernie Sanders would like them to be. He personally is much more negative about his own chances to win the presidency than the cards predict. It seems that he's pessimistic and he doesn't really believe in his own chances. Now, why is that? That is because, first of all, on a very personal level, we have the Nine of Swords, which means that not only does he feel he's being put under a lot of stress, which is quite natural when you are running a presidential campaign, but very often he feels like he's incapable of doing the right thing. This is probably because he thinks too much and doesn't trust his own instincts in the way that he should. He makes life more difficult for himself than it actually needs to be. And that sort of colors the way that he looks at the world around himself, which is Five of Cups in reverse. He has a tendency to see the world, or rather the presidential campaign as it is going now. He likes to see it in a more negative light than it actually is. And he has a tendency to dwell too much on the things that go wrong, because obviously during his campaign certain things are going to go wrong. And to a certain extent he has lost his view of the big picture, because the big picture of things is that the campaign is actually going quite well for him. And what we can see here, unsurprisingly, is that his attitude towards the future, as represented by the Eight of Pentacles in reverse, is rather negative, because it's characterized by a lack of patience. It's probably because he has been waiting too long. He feels he's been waiting too long to make his mark in the world, so to speak. And in a certain way, he believes that he will never get anywhere. And all his hard work, all his dedication is actually in vain. And that causes him a lot of heartache, as represented by the Three of Swords. So, to summarize what we just said, if I were his campaign manager, I would say to him, Bernie, things are not nearly as negative as you think they are. Be patient, and don't be angry, don't be frustrated, don't be negative, because you're doing much better than you actually think you are, and you are very, very, very close to success, because now we look at the 11th card that, as I said, fell out of the stack, which is the Nine of Pentacles. Now, the Nine of Pentacles is probably the best and most auspicious card in the entire tarot, because it means total fulfillment of wishes, both in a physical and in a spiritual and in an emotional way, which tells us that despite the fact that Bernie Sanders doesn't quite believe that he can make it, he has a very good chance to be successful. So this is the first time, this is the first of the candidates that we're looking at, where I say that he has a very good chance of actually getting himself elected, and that is because, as we already said, we have the Three of Pentacles. This is because he is the one candidate of the candidates that we've looked at so far who is most in tune with what the people, with what moves the people, with what the people actually want, with what people actually aspire to. And this is something that will very probably lead to his great success, despite the fact that he, and probably quite a lot of observers, don't actually believe that he can make it. Very, very interesting. So, and that concludes what we can see in the Celtic Cross spread. So let me put it away. In order for us to look at the Dakini Oracle deck, as I said earlier in the day, I did a Dakini Oracle deck spread. Unlike the last two times I've used 4 cards, only in this spread I have used 2 clarifiers because the situation was very complex and I wanted to be sure that I really understand what is going on. Now, can we see them on camera? Just rearrange them a bit. So, where does Bernie Sanders come from? Now, that's very interesting because the first card we get is the Magic Carpet. The Magic Carpet in reverse. That is very much like the Sun in reverse that we saw in the Celtic Cross spread. It means that Bernie Sanders didn't have it easy in his political life, and he has lacked much of the support that that other politicians and other candidates get quite naturally, which is certainly has to do partly with the fact that many of his opinions are at odds with what other politicians profess, and also it has to do with the Cosmic Carrot, which you see here. The next card is the Cosmic Carrot in reverse. And the Cosmic Carrot has to do with incentive. Now, if it's in reverse, it means that there is a lack of practical incentive. Now, what does that mean? Well, it quite simply means that, as we all know, Bernie Sanders has a very clear position about classical ways of campaign financing, or to put it simpler, he stays away from millionaires and likes to have his campaign financed by small donations by simple people. And this is something that, while it is certainly honourable, makes it much more difficult for him to get his message across. And this is something that might cause observers of his political career to believe that he's simply not going to make it. We have cutting through in reverse. Now, cutting through cutting through doesn't really need explanation. It means that you get where you want to get, and you're intelligent and you're capable and you have the means of getting where you want to get. If it's in reverse, you don't get to where you want to go to. But the end result is Ganesha, the Lord of Obstacles, which is very interesting, because that despite all the odds, and despite the fact that people believe that he will never make it in the end, he does. He wins despite all the odds. Actually, the more odds they are, the more it spurs him on to actually be victorious, and in the end, he is. Now, I found that very interesting, and I wanted to know why this happens, so I included 2 clarifying cards into the spread, the first of which was Recall Memory in reverse. Now, recall memory has something to do with the consciousness, with common consciousness, probably with the consciousness of an entire nation. And it means that Bernie Sanders is the one candidate who is able to tap into that. The fact that it's in reverse means quite simply that Bernie Sanders is open to listen to ideas that other candidates would quite simply dismiss, because they would qualify them as unrealistic or probably un-American or something of a kind. But Bernie Sanders has the ability to actually listen to the people. And the same applies to this card, which is Isis, the High Priestess, which means that which is a parallel to the Queen of Cups and the Queen of Wands that we saw in the Celtic Cross spread. It means that he has the ability against the odds, which is why the card is in reverse, against the odds to provide quality leadership in a more feminine sort of way, as I explained before. And he's also able to win the trust and the confidence of female voters. We can conclude that the vote of female voters, as I already said, will be very, very, very important to him. And we see that there is a good chance of him to actually win the presidency. And the interesting thing is that most political commentators will probably not believe that he can win the presidency, and it will look, until the very end, it will look as if he has no chance, or if he's closely missing, or if he's missing it closely. Now, I must say I found this spread of cards most fascinating, was the most fascinating of the 3 that I've done so far. I hope that you liked it too, and let me know what you think about it. As I always say, if you liked what you saw, please don't forget to give me a thumbs up and to subscribe to my channel. And also stay around, because next week I'll be doing the 4th session of the presidential election card spreads, which will be about Elizabeth Warren. So there's a lot of fascinating stuff coming up. So please stay with me, and for the time being, have a very good time, and see you next time around. Bye.